Welcome to NovoEDTalks, where we reveal real-world strategies and expert insights from learning and development professionals. In every episode, we chat with practitioners, course designers, learning strategists, and business leads. We hear about their experiences in the learning industry and predictions for the profession and the trends that they're seeing. But before we get started, a little bit about NovoEd. Founded at Stanford's Social Algorithms Lab in 2012, NovoEd is a people-centric, capability-building platform that combines social and collaborative learning to drive performance readiness at scale. Through cohort-based experiences centered around human interaction, NovoEd taps into collective wisdom, placing each learner at the center of perspective, application, and expertise. Large enterprises such as 3M, GE, Marriott International, and Nestle partner with NovoEd to accelerate their critical initiatives, reconnect teams, and achieve rapid alignment through learning that is felt, experienced, and swiftly transformed into impact. Now, let's meet our guest for today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the NovoEDTalks podcast, a space for training trailblazers to get real. My name is Melissa Fisk. I am the producer of the NovoEDTalks podcast, and today I am joined by Brissa Ramos, who is a senior manager at ServiceNow. Brissa is a dynamic sales enablement and learning leader with 20 plus years of experience driving sales performance through data-driven enablement strategies, AI-powered learning solutions, and stakeholder collaboration. She has proven success in aligning enablement initiatives with sales objectives, improving revenue impact, and optimizing training workflows for measurable results. She is adept at using CRM tools, predictive analytics, and AI-driven learning models to empower high-growth sales teams. Brissa, we are so excited to have you on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. Welcome.
Hi, Melissa. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here with you and, to kind of get a chance to talk to you more about what it is that I do every single day. So thank you.
That's awesome. Well, why don't you start by just getting right into it and talking a little bit more about yourself, your role, and your company and what you're doing every day.
Sure. So again, thank you for having me. My name is Brissa Ramos, and I work for ServiceNow. We are a SaaS technology company, and I focus on managing a team of content creators, so instructional designers. And our job is to really enable the partner community that works with ServiceNow, really focusing on how to get them to revenue faster, how to grow their journey with ServiceNow, and really equip them to have the tools that they need to be successful in their journey with ServiceNow.
That's awesome. What a fun job that must be too. I feel like very rewarding, right? Who are the learners that you kind of oversee and what are their challenges that they're facing?
Okay, so the learners that we oversee are our partners, and specifically sales and pre-sales partners with ServiceNow. So we focus on really training them and getting them the information that they need to better co-sell and better, sell through with ServiceNow. As a technology company, we have products that are being pumped out, all the time. I mean, and so, some of these partners, they don't just sell for ServiceNow, they sell for many different types of companies as well. So our challenge is really, how do we capture them? How do we get them the information that they need so they can be successful with, an overwhelming type of environment that we live in right now?
Absolutely. And how do you see that kind of like translate into bigger challenges for the organization for your general kind of like workforce development challenges? Does that like play a big role in that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it does. I think we are living in a very busy time in the world in general. All I hear, I mean, my husband and I have this conversation all the time because it's AI at work, right? It's AI outside of work. It's AI. Any everything is AI right now. So how do you not get overwhelmed with everything that's being thrown at us, right? Just as human beings, as individuals, not even alone just at work, but just, everything that's coming at us, right? How do you consume all of this information, right? How do you kind of funnel through that information and see, okay, what's going to make the biggest impact for me today, right? Instead of thinking of all of these things that are coming at us. So I think that's one of the biggest challenge. And so I really try to put myself in that learner's shoes, like, okay, they have all of these things coming at them. Like, what is it that they need at this time? And let's get that information to them. And then let's focus about that, what is coming next
Yeah.
tomorrow. So
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, so difficult to do where it's like, how do you find, the most important like piece of information that we need to convey like at this time and what's the best way to do it? And it's like, you'd think it's less, they always say that like less is harder
yeah,
sometimes to do
less
that.
is more. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As the skill sets needed for success continue to shift in this crazy busy evolving environment that we're all in, what strategies do you and your team use to ensure that like your learners and your workforce remains adaptable and prepared?
Yeah, no, that is a great question. So, again, our biggest challenge is keeping pace with all these rapid technologies, right? So I really try to take the learner feedback into a lot of what we do. So we send out surveys, we do focus groups, a lot of focus groups. We just talk to the partners, right? Like, hey, where are you at in your journey, right? So not just sitting up, with the strategy, but actually being in the ground with our partners and saying, hey, what are some of the things that you're seeing? What's working for you? What's not working for you? How do you not, what's overwhelming you? What's not overwhelming you at this time? What can we get you more that you need in order for you to be successful? So, I think putting ourselves in that kind of situation, really helps us, really speaking with them and, doing the surveys, doing the focus groups, really having those kind of KPIs, really measuring the completion. What are they consuming from us, right? Completion achievements. What type of achievements are they getting? And really trying to, level set those things to kind of keep trends on what's going on with our learners.
Absolutely. So you kind of just talked about this a little bit, but with all of those things that you're measuring and looking at and how you're checking in with folks, but how do you kind of weave through all of that to address or assess and address skills gaps within the organization, and how do you kind of overcome those?
Yeah, no, so that is a great question. And yeah, we just did talk about it. But yeah, I try to measure, those type of things. Like what is important to them? What do they need to have in order to meet these objectives, right? One of the main things is okay, net new logos, net new ACVs, right? Okay, what's gonna make the biggest impact in their day, right? So what do they need in order to get there, right? Measuring again those achievements, those completions, like even views counts, right? Like, hey, are they even looking at this or are they skipping through this kind of training? Is this really making a difference for them? A lot of times what I see of what I've noticed is, something from the top could come down on us and, it's like a fire drill, like you have to get it done, of course, hair on fire type of situation. But then, you look at the consumption and what the actual learner is doing and you're like, wait, they don't really care about this too much, right? So, sometimes just kind of taking a step back and saying, doing that analysis piece, which is really hard sometimes, at least in my space, and really taking a look at the analysis and say, is that really what they need? Or is training even necessary here? Maybe it's just a quick communications that they need, or, just awareness of something. They might not even need a full-on training, and, they might not even want to consume this full-on training. So, really taking a look at those things.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a tough one with sales enablement kind of work where it's like sometimes it's not they have the knowledge, it's maybe like a confidence thing, that they're just like not able to speak to it or whatnot. So it's like how do you, that's you got to almost like put on like detective cap to find those kind of like weaknesses or where those are and like where they're coming out. Do you have an example of a successful case study of one of your programs that significantly impacted employee performance and contributed to the overall success of the organization?
Of course. So employee performance for me would be partner performance, right? So one of our biggest programs that we launched, and we've actually just re-innovated, which it's been amazing, is Shark Camp for Partners. And what Shark Camp for Partners is, it's a sales program that we created and launched to better go in this sales journey with our partners, right? And really bringing in not just a trainer, but someone that's doing it, like people from the field, SMEs, right? BUs, so like the business unit that are in the field, bringing them in to speak with our partners to say, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what, and giving them a chance to ask live questions to those experts, right? And that had made a huge difference, for us having those live sessions in there. We actually had a simulation in there that took our partners through a deal, right? So like, how do you move through a sales cycle, right? Like within ServiceNow, and actually giving them these learning moments, right? To say, okay, kind of simulate what you would be doing if you were in a sales cycle with us, right? That journey. And now this is really exciting, but we just innovated the entire program. We took 2 years of surveys and feedback from our partners. One of the things that they really wanted, hey, 3 days is kind of a long time to be off the floor, right? Like off of the phones. We would like kind of more of like a hybrid approach. So we incorporated this really cool learning tool called Intrepid. And basically what it is, it's like an online classroom environment where you can get peer reviews, feedback, collaborate with one another, and like really giving them a chance to learn, not just from the SMEs, but from one another, like that peer review. And inside of Intrepid, we have incorporated this amazing tool called Bongo, which is an AI coach. And this AI coach really gives you a chance to practice your perfect pitch inside of a sales cycle, right? Because another thing we noticed too in this in the feedback that we collected over the years with the program is that a lot of people don't want to do these role plays in front of another anymore, right? Like the role play was just kind of getting, kind of rusty. And, I think, the younger folks, they don't really like practicing in front of one another. So with the AI Bongo coach, it gives them a chance to kind of practice on their own in a safe space, get some feedback, and then go into the classroom the next day for a few hours and have that peer review conversation about their pitch and how to perfect it. And then they take that away and then they improve it and they come back and implement it. So that has been amazing. We've seen some, great feedback from the program, and we're just like super excited about it.
That's awesome. And I love that because it is so hard. The role play thing is so hard to get around and get people to be like actually like authentic or like how they would really be, but it's important. Like they need to practice, but that's always a tricky one for folks. You talked a lot about some of the different tech that you're using. So obviously you'd say that technology plays a pretty important role in what you're doing there at ServiceNow. Do you want to speak any more to like any other kind of like tools or platforms that you're using to enhance your experiences for employees?
Sure. So we are a small, mighty team. And so we have thousands of partners that we are responsible for. So tools to us is everything, right? And especially the way that the tools are being created nowadays, right? It's just like so many tools. It's like, okay. Another thing too, like how many tools can I explore in 1 week, right? Without getting overwhelmed. But yeah, for us, having these amazing AI tools has made our productivity just, skyrocket. Because again, we are responsible for thousands of people partner accreditations, all of these things that are very important in the ecosystem that we are performing in. And so having these great tools has just made a big, huge difference for us. Even, in Storyline and Rise, the entire Articulate suite has all of the AI features now. That has made a huge difference. We use this Mighty tool that kind of attaches to Rise and lets you customize things in blocks within Rise, because it could be very linear inside of Rise. So really, this has made a huge difference. I don't think I could ever use Rise anymore without having the Mighty tool attached to it. Just because, again, the customization has been amazing. Genuinely, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's a rapid authoring tool that has AI incorporated with it. And it's like having Storyline and Rise if they made a baby. That's what this tool is. And it's been fantastic. Synthesia, for, talking head videos, that has been great too. So no, tools have made a huge difference for us. And I've seen, my team grow and flourish. A small, mighty team, we've accomplished so much in just the last year because of these amazing tools that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. For my next question, that part of your answer was just part of my next question. But if we're looking back over the past 5 years as learning and development and mentoring programs have changed very rapidly, what are some of the key takeaways you've seen? I'd say obviously number one being the development of all of these tools that we can use. But what other takeaways have you seen?
Yeah. So, some takeaways is we have trying not to stay current again with our learners. Really challenging to, instructional design concepts that we all have, grown up with. I wouldn't say, I don't want to age myself here, but in the last 20 something years, I've seen just, again, like what we mentioned, so many different changes, within the industry itself. How do you take the learner to a more informal type of learning, where they feel like they really are in charge of their own learning? And, kind of like how we behave with the internet now, right? Or like all of these amazing tools like ChatGPT, and you're constantly learning, but it's more in an informal way. So how do you take that? How do you kind of own that space where you don't feel like you're pressing things on your learners? Because that's the last thing I want to do as an instructional designer, right? It's kind of force my learners to do something that they don't want to do, especially adult learners. So, how do you kind of move through that space in that way where you take it like, hey, really take a look at what's going on, right? Like, how are people learning, and how can we put ourselves in that space where they are really feel like they're in charge of their learning, and we make it more fun how they would be acting within their normal everyday lives, right? Whether like it's Instagram or, something more fun like that, without totally saying, hey, I'm going to forget about my objectives and how to get, how to structure this training, but kind of taking it, kind of massaging those things, making it more agile and really moving through what your learners really go through.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that also gets into my next question too, talking about like, how are you preparing for the next 5 years? You just talked about that a little bit with like the tech component of that, and like, how are we just like as humans every day consuming, content and things like that. So like having to kind of like adapt to that. But what else, do you see, or how else are you all like preparing to kind of move through the next 5 years, especially with this, AI every day coming at you?
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question. I don't know if I have the answers to everything, right? I do take it literally one step at a time. We do have moments of sharing is caring within my team. We're like the Care Bears. So, one of the things that I tell my team is, hey, what are you seeing out there? Like, let's share, not just from me, but I want to hear from you. What are you seeing? In your space, right? And and of course, there's different ages within my team, so I want to know from all the ages, all the age groups, right? Like, hey, what are you seeing? What are some of the things? What cool tools are you learning about that I might not be exposed to? Like, sharing is caring, or what best practice have you ran into this week that you want to share with the team so that we can all kind of learn from it? I definitely think, taking it one step at a time, just because otherwise it just feels really overwhelming, right? With everything that's going on out there, especially with the AI conversation. I'm telling you, I'm like, totally all day, every day is AI. So, you're just kind of taking a step back. I think the consumption of AI is not as fast for everyone as we think it's gonna be. That's one of the things that I've been noticing too. So yeah, there's a lot of AI, but like with everything, all the buzzing that's going on, how do you actually consume the AI, right? So
Yeah.
how do you make it work with what you're doing every single day, where it's like it feels like it's helping, not like overwhelming and hindering what you're doing.
Right. And that's where I love that piece that you mentioned that your team shares with one another because it's so true. It's like, okay, so many cool AI tools, blah, 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 blah. But then when you were having conversations with people, like this happened with like me and my girlfriends at lunch the other day, we were chatting about AI, which if you had told me and my girlfriend would be chatting that at lunch, I never would have believed you. But they were talking about how like they're using certain AI tools to like streamline like the management of their day-to-day lives, which, like it's like, oh, I struggle with this. Like I struggle with like managing my calendar. So I'm using like this tool. And like here we always like word of mouth recommendations over just like infiltration of whatever. So I love that you have that kind of like sharing is caring like round table with your team where it's like, hey, what tools are you guys using and how are you using them and why are you using them? Like, what is it accomplishing? Because like when you hear it from a real person, like and how they're incorporating it into their day-to-day life, it's definitely much more powerful than just like getting advertised it or seeing someone say, oh, you have to use this because of X, Y, and Z. So I love that. Um, Brisa, as kind of a fun way to close out our episode today, what's the most important lesson that you've learned as a leader that you would pass on to someone who's just starting out on their journey?
Sure. No, great question. For me, it is not just one leadership style. You really have to adapt to your people, right? And what style do they need? I can't say, oh, this is the kind of leader that I am, right? Because I am different with all of them. And I also think I've learned a lot from being a mom as well. Because again, with your kids, you're like, wait, I did the same thing and it's not working. Yeah, because they're different people, right? So I think it's the same exact thing when it comes to leadership. One person might need, more support in a certain area or more instruction, or depending on where they are in their career journey as well. But I can definitely tell you that I am a leader that is in the trenches, right? And I am in the front line. There's no job or task that's too small for me, right? So, whatever they need, I'm creating courses, I'm uploading courses, I'm making videos. And I think it keeps me relevant too. And it kind of fulfills that creativity side of me. And I can really say, oh, yeah, this is still what's going on in the field. It's not just like a strategy point of view, but just really being in there with them and, whatever they need in that particular moment or space that we're in, just being in there with them has made a huge difference.
Absolutely. I think that's fabulous advice. And like it's kind of like a respect thing, where respect is earned, right? And if you're in there doing things with your team, they're going to respect you just because you're doing it with them. You're not saying how to do it. So I love that. That's great advice, Brisa. Brisa, thank you so much for joining us on the NovoEDTalks podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate being here, and it's been a pleasure. Anytime. If I'm welcome back, I'll come back.
Awesome. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of NovoED Talks.